So, picture this: my sister Vanessa just demanded I hand over $8,000 for my niece's party. Yep, $8,000. And before I knew it, my dad was threatening to disown me if I didn't pay. But here's the wild part by sunrise. The whole family bank, as I knew it, was permanently closed. Seriously, what happened next? Well, let's just say this isn't your usual birthday drama. Stick around, because the twists that follow are, honestly, unbelievable. I had been running on fumes for days, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. My migraine wasn't just a headache. It was this relentless, pounding pressure behind my right eye that made the walls of my office feel like they were closing in. 3 full days of it, non-stop. I was 44, a partner at my law firm, specializing in contracts. The precise, ironclad kind that required absolute attention to detail. And yet here I was, utterly spent, my mind fuzzy, my body staging a full-on rebellion. I had just closed a brutal multi-state merger, working 80-hour weeks for a solid month. Coffee and sheer willpower were my only allies, and even they were failing me. All I wanted was to crawl into bed, pull the covers over my head, and disappear for at least a week. Just a week of peace. That's all I needed, I thought. But of course, peace wasn't on the agenda. My phone buzzed, and the vibration against the polished mahogany made me flinch. It was a text from Vanessa. My stomach immediately tightened. She never sent a simple, friendly message. No. Her texts were always the prologue to some financial demand, some urgent need I hadn't been consulted on. I squinted at the screen through the haze of my migraine, bracing myself, and there it was, a picture, then another. First, a reservation confirmation for Lahatlet, one of the most ridiculously expensive venues in the city. My pulse quickened. Then, a picture of Lucy, my niece, grinning ear to ear in a designer dress that probably cost more than my first car. And then, a screenshot of a DJ's website, complete with pyrotechnics. And finally, the text that made my head pound even harder. Harriet, Lucy's Sweet 16 is gonna be iconic. Just wired the deposits. Total is $16,000. Your half is $8,000. Need it by Friday. Zoxo. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen, my brain trying to process the absurdity. $8,000. Your half. As if this were a shared utility bill. As if I'd even been asked. As if I hadn't just covered her credit card debt 3 months ago. The sheer audacity was staggering. My migraine seemed to pulse in rhythm with my anger and disbelief. I'd always been the family's safety net, the one who sacrificed, who saved, who worked tirelessly, while Vanessa seemed to float through life, drawing on my labor and my bank account. And here she was again, treating me as nothing more than an ATM, expecting compliance without discussion. I could feel my hands shake slightly as I typed a single, measured response. Vanessa, that is an astronomical amount of money. I cannot pay for this. Her reply was instantaneous, as though she had been waiting. Don't be like this, Harriet. It's for Lucy. Don't you want your niece to be happy? It's just money. You have plenty. It's just money. And my migraine flared anew, every word echoing through my skull. Money I had earned by sacrificing holidays, relationships, sleep, all for this kind of entitlement. Money that she treated as though it sprouted on trees, just waiting for her to take. I placed the phone face down, pressing the heels of my palms against my temples. I couldn't deal with this, not now. Then it buzzed again. Caller ID, Dad. My chest tightened further. I let it ring. I didn't want to answer, but of course, he wouldn't stop. Eventually, I picked up, voice tight. Hi, Dad. His voice boomed, sharp and cold. Don't hi, Dad me, Harriet. Vanessa just told me you're refusing to help with Lucy's party after everything we've done for you. My head throbbed. Every word a hammer. He accused, manipulated, lectured, until the final blow. You pay up or you're dead to us. Do you understand? Click. The line went dead. I sat there, the receiver pressed to my ear, silence humming through the room. It wasn't really the money, it never was, but the expectation, the entitlement, the way they reduced me to nothing but a financial tool. It was staggering. My migraine roared in agreement, and in that roar, something inside me hardened. The weary put upon daughter vanished, replaced by a sharp, cold clarity. In that moment, I knew I couldn't give in. Not this time. The tension didn't ease at all. Vanessa's texts kept coming, one after another, each more frantic than the last. Harriet, answer your phone. This isn't funny. She was desperate, almost hysterical, as if my silence was some personal attack. My head throbbed with each buzz, the migraine a relentless pulse behind my right eye. I could feel the weight of fatigue pressing down, but also a sharp spike of frustration. She wasn't asking. She was demanding, and the entitlement radiated from every message. Then came the call from Dad. My chest tightened instantly. 70 years old, retired, usually calm. But when Vanessa pulled him into her orbit, he became something else entirely: loud, insistent, immovable. I let it ring once, twice, then finally picked up, my voice tight. Hi, Dad. His voice cut through the room like a blade. Don't hi, Dad me, Harriet. Vanessa just told me you're refusing to help with Lucy's party after everything we've done for you. Every word was heavy, accusatory, and impossible to ignore. He spoke with a confidence that assumed I was in the wrong, and I could hear the way Vanessa had primed him, how she had spun the narrative so that my refusal became evidence of cruelty or selfishness. He berated me with words meant to provoke guilt and fear, to make me comply, to make me feel like the black sheep of the family. I could feel my migraine spike with every accusation. This wasn't just about money. It was control, manipulation, and the unspoken rules of our family laid bare. And yet, through the fog of fatigue and the pounding in my skull, something unexpected began to happen. I began to see the pattern, the mechanics behind their pressure. It was always the same: guilt, entitlement, threats. And I realized that I had a choice. I could either succumb, as I had countless times before, or I could take control of the situation, cold and calculated. Then Dad's tone dropped. That low, dangerous level I recognized immediately. The kind of voice that meant finality. You know, your mother, God rest her soul, would be ashamed of you. Absolutely ashamed. You pay up or you're dead to us. Do you understand me? You'll be out of this family for good. Click. Silence. The line went dead, leaving me with the hum of my migraine and a strange, crushing quiet. Dead to us. Pay up or face permanent disownment. It was heavy, suffocating, meant to intimidate and terrify. But in that suffocating quiet, my mind cleared in an odd, unexpected way. I had spent my life trying to earn their love, trying to meet impossible expectations, sacrificing endlessly while Vanessa floated by. The repeated emotional manipulation, the relentless demands, the threats they had always worked before. But now, instead of breaking me, they crystallized something in me. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. The exhaustion was still there, yes, but beneath it, a focused awareness began to form. This wasn't about a birthday party or money. This was about my life, my boundaries, and finally, my refusal to be controlled. I set the phone down and pressed my palms to my temples, letting the silence wrap around me. The anger, the frustration, the entitlement of my father and sister, it was all visible now. And with that visibility came power. Not over them, but over myself. I had the ability to choose my response, to act with intention rather than react out of fatigue and fear. I wasn't just the weary daughter or the constantly exploited sister anymore. I was someone who could think, strategize, and enforce boundaries that had never existed before. For the first time in years, I breathed, truly breathed. In the midst of the migraine and the pressure, I realized that their threats, their manipulation, were transparent. And with that clarity, I felt a growing, cold, steady resolve. They had misjudged me. They had assumed exhaustion and obligation would bend me to their will. But they had underestimated me. I wasn't just Harriet, the overworked daughter. I was Harriet, the one who could act, who could set limits, who could reclaim control. And in that moment, even with a headache pounding and my energy depleted, I felt a flicker of empowerment, a quiet, determined strength that refused to be bullied any longer. After the call from Dad, I sat there for a long time, just staring at the muted glow of my office lights. My migraine was still there, lingering at the edges of my consciousness. But it had started to fade into something manageable. The adrenaline of the confrontation had sharpened my mind in a way fatigue never could. I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't reacting, I was thinking. Strategically, I had spent my entire career reading contracts, understanding leverage, obligations, consequences. I had spent decades parsing the letter of the law, ensuring every clause worked in my favor. And now, suddenly, that skill was mine to apply to the chaos my family had created. I poured myself a cup of tea, letting the warmth spread through my hands, grounding me. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity. I knew what Vanessa was doing. I knew what Dad wanted, and I knew exactly what I had at my disposal. My first move wasn't to confront, argue, or pay. No. My first move was to refocus on what actually mattered Lucy. Because despite the chaos and entitlement surrounding her, she was still a kid, caught up in all of it. I wanted to reach her before all of this drama tainted her perception of me or her mother. I picked up the phone, my hands steady now, and dialed Lucy's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright, bubbly, full of excitement. "Hi, Aunt Harriet. Hey, Luce. How are you?" I kept my voice calm, even conversational, like nothing heavy had happened moments before. I wanted her to feel safe, not like she had walked into some adult trap she couldn't navigate. Oh my God, I'm amazing Mom is planning the most incredible party. It's going to be insane. Did you see the pictures I did? I said evenly. It looks very elaborate. Are you excited? Excited. I'm going to die. Everyone's going to be there. It's going to be the best party of the year. Her enthusiasm was contagious, even through the tension I still carried from the prior hours. But I paused, choosing my words carefully, measuring the emotional impact against the practical reality I was about to introduce. Loose. Honey, I said softly, swirling the tea in my mug. I know your mom is handling the planning, but I wanted to talk to you about something else. Your birthday present from me. Oh, yeah, what is it? Her voice went quiet for a second, and I knew she was curious, hopeful. I could almost see the wheels turning in her mind. I leaned back in my chair, the calm of my apartment contrasting with the storm outside. I was thinking, a party is one night, I said, but you've been talking about that summer pre-college program at the Art Institute for 2 years. The application deadline is next month. I want to pay for that. Tuition, housing, everything. And I'll give you a stipend for your supplies. There was a sharp silence on the other end. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then a muffled voice. Wow, that's a lot of money. It is, I admitted quietly. But it's an investment in you. A party is over in a few hours. This could actually shape your future. Something that matters in the long run, not just one night. I heard movement in the background, a rustle, a sharp inhale, and then Vanessa's voice, cutting like glass. Who's that, Mom? Give me the phone. Then, her voice again, right in my ear. What are you doing? Harriet, I'm offering your daughter a gift that will actually matter in 5 years, I said calmly, almost gently. Something lasting, something she wants, something for her future. Oh, I see, she sneered. You won't pay for the party everyone's excited about, but you'll wave this in her face to make me look bad. You're unbelievable. You're trying to turn her against me. I'm not, I said, my patience snapping just slightly. I'm trying to give her a future, something you clearly don't value as much as a DJ and a limousine. You selfish, she sputtered, incandescent with rage. Her words flared, her voice shaking with fury. You know what, fine. Keep your money, but you're not welcome at the party, and you're not welcome in this family. Dad meant it. We're done with you. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in silence, the house quiet again. And then, I looked at the reservation confirmation she had sent me earlier. Lahatlet. Notoriously difficult venue. Enormous deposits. Contracts stricter than iron. My pulse quickened. Not with fear, but with clarity. Vanessa had been an event planner for less than a year. She was all flash, no substance. Whatever was put in front of her, she would sign blindly. And there it was, the leverage I needed. The personal guarantee clause. Someone with assets, someone legally responsible. She had used my co-signed mortgage to guarantee the business. She had ensnared me legally, but she had done it without thinking about the consequences of her own incompetence. I leaned back, sipping the now cooling tea. My migraine had vanished completely, replaced by a sharp, methodical focus. The shift inside me was palpable. The weary, overworked daughter was gone. The contract lawyer had taken over. They thought they had cornered me, but what they didn't realize was that I was the one who wrote the consequences. I wasn't reacting out of anger anymore. I was planning, step by step, carefully, deliberately. This was no longer a battle to placate them. This was a calculated, strategic exercise in leverage and legal precision. And it all started with giving Lucy what actually mattered, while the rest unraveled in my hands. I could feel my resolve hardening, a quiet fire burning beneath my calm exterior. I was done being the victim. Now, I was the strategist, and the rules had just changed. I sat at my desk, staring at the laptop screen, the hum of the city outside my window filling the quiet apartment. My tea had gone cold hours ago, but I didn't care. My focus was absolute, razor sharp. I'd already shifted from the emotional exhaustion to strategy, but what I was about to uncover went beyond anything I had expected. I opened the state's business registry and pulled up Vanessa's LLC. Vibrant Events. Formed 6 months ago. Okay, fairly new. I cross-referenced it with the property records for the house she lived in. The house I had put the down payment on. The house I had co-signed the mortgage for. And there it was. She had used my name, my credit, my assets as collateral. My pulse quickened. That wasn't just audacity, it was illegal, reckless. And it tied me directly to everything she was planning. I leaned back and pinched the bridge of my nose. This was no longer about a party. The $8,000 demand, the tantrums, the ultimatums, those were just the surface. This was a trap. She hadn't simply asked for money, she had constructed a legal snare, counting on my compliance to protect her from the consequences she had knowingly set in motion. And she thought I wouldn't see it. She thought exhaustion would make me bend, would make me pay, would make me save her from her own fraud. I opened the articles of incorporation for her LLC, scrolling carefully, my eyes narrowing. And there it was, my name, listed as a silent partner on her financing application. No signature. Wait. I pulled up the scanned documents. There it was, my signature. But not quite. The angle was off. The pressure, the flow of the pen sloppy, almost comical in its clumsiness. She had traced it, tried to forge it. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just financial recklessness. This was wire fraud. This was criminal. She had deliberately entangled me in a web of liabilities using a forged signature. I felt my hands go cold. I took a deep breath. My lawyer, Michael, had always taught me to separate shock from action, emotion from logic. So I did. I started piecing it together. She had used the LLC and the associated loan to book Lahatlet's extravagant party. She had wired deposits using the loan, knowing I was the co-signer and thus technically responsible for the full balance if she defaulted. If I had paid, I would have been reinforcing her criminal actions. If I didn't pay, she assumed I'd cave to avoid the legal and financial fallout. She had set me up, deliberately, and counted on me being predictable, obedient, exhausted. The scope was staggering. $16,000 for the party was just the beginning. Pulling up the financing agreements, I realized the loan wasn't even fully accounted for in her party planning. There were other withdrawals, cash, other vendors, purchases that didn't make sense. The more I traced, the more the pattern became clear. She wasn't running a legitimate business. She was siphoning money, laundering it through what appeared to be an innocent enterprise, and leveraging my assets to cover her tracks. Every document I cross-referenced, every date and signature I analyzed, painted a picture of meticulous, deliberate fraud. And I had been invited to play the unwitting accomplice. I leaned forward, my pulse quickening not with fear, but with clarity. I could feel the shift in the room. The migraine had completely vanished, replaced by a calculated focus. This was what I had trained for, what I had spent years honing my mind for parsing legal documents, finding leverage, reading the fine print. I went clause by clause through Lahatlet's contract, the LLC's financing paperwork, cross-referencing each obligation, each installment, each guarantor's signature. Every step revealed more risk she had taken and more risk she had placed squarely on my shoulders. And then it hit me. The forged signature meant the entire loan was in default if proven false. That made her personally liable. Yes, but it also gave me leverage. The agency that had issued the loan would be compelled to act once presented with the evidence. I wasn't powerless. The legal snare she had thought would trap me had, in fact, provided me with a weapon. The deposit to the venue, the LLC, the forged signature, they were all pieces of a puzzle that, when put together, revealed her vulnerability. Her plan wasn't just unethical, it was fragile. And I held the key to dismantling it. I opened her LLC filings again, slowly, methodically. I highlighted every date, every signature, every discrepancy. It became obvious that she had acted without understanding the consequences, without considering that her actions could be traced and challenged. And I realized something else: she had done this in a hurry. She had counted on my fatigue, my predictability, my sense of obligation, that miscalculation. That was my advantage. This was no longer a desperate reaction. This was a calculated, methodical operation. I called Michael. It was 1:10 p.m. He picked up immediately. "Harriet, this can't be good," he said. His voice, instantly alert. "It's bad," I said, calmly walking him through every piece of evidence, every document, the co-signed house, the LLC, the forged signature, the venue deposit. I could hear the weight of realization in his voice, the low whistle that signaled the severity. "Scorched earth territory," he said. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yes, but it's leverage. She's in breach. The loan is in default, and I hold the proof." My voice was steady, calm, deliberate. We talked through every angle, every consequence, the timeline for the next installment to the venue, the legal obligations of a guarantor, and the criminal implications of the forged signature, step by step. I mapped out the leverage I had, the constraints she faced, the power I could wield without ever losing control. I realized then that the trap wasn't mine to build, it had already been set. All I had to do was recognize it and act with the precision I had spent a lifetime honing. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of understanding settling around me. The emotional exhaustion was still there, yes, but it no longer clouded my judgment. I could see clearly now, each piece in its place, each risk mapped, each opportunity for action visible. Vanessa had thought she was cornering me, but she had done it with her own hands. And in doing so, she had given me the advantage. The victim was gone, the strategist was awake, and in that awakening, I felt a cold, methodical sense of empowerment. I wasn't just seeing the fraud, I was seeing my path forward, every step of it, with complete clarity. I sat at my desk, the city lights flickering through the blinds, my tea long gone cold. Everything I had uncovered, the forged signature, the fraudulent loan, the full scope of Vanessa's financial manipulation was laid out in front of me like a map, a blueprint of leverage waiting to be executed. I picked up the phone and called Michael. His voice was instant, alert, the kind that makes you feel like every word matters. "Harriet, you realize the magnitude of this, right?" he said. "I do," I replied, calm, measured. "And that's why we act carefully. This isn't about rage, it's about precision. My mind raced, outlining every detail, every clause, every timeline. The venue contract, the LLC. The personal guarantee, these were not just words on paper anymore. They were tools, weapons in the right hands. We talked through the plans step by step. The first installment to Lihatlit was due Thursday at 5 p.m. Vanessa had wired the deposit, but the next payment, that was going to be the trigger. She was counting on me to bail her out, to pay the $8,000 she demanded and cover her negligence. But I wouldn't. Not this time. Michael outlined how we would approach the venue legally. I would not call Vanessa. I would not speak to her directly. Instead, he would notify the venue that the deposit had been secured through a fraudulent loan, supported by my evidence of the forged signature. If they tried to pursue the balance from me, we would countersue. Citing failure of due diligence and exposing the fraud, the threat of a multi-million-dollar lawsuit would be enough to make them reconsider. I felt a strange thrill, not of malice, but of clarity. For years, I had been the family's unwitting banker, the default rescuer, the one who never said no. And now, I had turned the tables, not with force, not with threats, but with facts, law, and cold, deliberate leverage. The next day passed in a surreal haze. Vanessa's texts piled up, frantic, panicked, desperate. I didn't respond. My father's calls went straight to voicemail, his threats echoing unheard. As far as they knew, I was hiding, paralyzed, shamefaced, possibly about to pay up. In reality, I was preparing, double-checking documents, verifying every clause, making sure every piece of evidence was airtight. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a surgical strike. Thursday afternoon arrived, 5:01 p.m. The second installment failed to process. My phone buzzed immediately. Vanessa. Let me guess she thought it was a simple error she could fix by pleading, by begging. 5:02 p.m., another call. 5:03 p.m., a text. Harriet, the venue just called. The payment didn't go through. You need to send the money now. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but with anticipation. 5:04 p.m. Text from Dad. Pick up your phone. You're playing a dangerous game, girl. I let them simmer. I let them stew. I had waited decades for this moment, and I wasn't about to ruin it. Finally, at 6:00 p.m., I called Vanessa. She picked up before the first ring finished, her voice a strange shriek, tinged with panic. Harriet, thank God, you need to transfer the money. They're going to cancel the venue. You have to do it right now. I leaned back in my chair, voice calm, precise, almost clinical. Hello, Vanessa. Hello, Vanessa me. The payment is late. Lucy's party is in 2 days. Send the money. There was a long, terrified pause. And then, what do you mean you can't? It's just $8,000. Just do it. I let my words land slowly, deliberately. Actually, it's not. The payment due today was $4,000, which you apparently don't have because the bank has frozen your business account. Silence. She could hear it. She could feel it. The trap had sprung. How did you know that? She whispered, panic stripping the bravado from her voice. Because my lawyer informed the bank about the fraudulent loan you took out using my forged signature. I said. The words hung in the air, heavy, inescapable. I could practically hear her mind spinning, trying to grasp the situation, trying to pull together some defense, some escape. She stammered. I I don't know what you're talking about. That's crazy. I would never. I cut her off sharply. Stop lying, Vanessa. I have the loan application. I have the scan of your sloppy forgery. I have the articles of incorporation where you listed me as a partner without my consent. You didn't just ask me for money. You stole from me. You committed wire fraud, a felony. Her voice cracked, sobbing now, wet and desperate. I had to get the business started. It was just to get it on its feet. I was going to pay it back. Pay it back with what? By throwing $16,000 parties you couldn't afford and demanding $8,000 from me. You weren't building a business, Vanessa. You were building debt, and you tied me to it. This isn't about a party, it's about the fraud you created, and now the consequences are yours. My voice was cold, sharp, but controlled. She shrieked, delusional rage returning, accusing me of jealousy, of trying to ruin her. I listened, the fury in her words bouncing off a wall I had built from evidence, from logic, from years of professional discipline. She was cornered, and she knew it. The panic was visible even through the phone, the sharp intake of breath, the stammering, the pleading. The trap was working, the plan unfolding perfectly. Finally, I heard the surrender in her tone. She didn't say it outright yet, but I can feel it. The fear, the realization of her exposure, the consequences she had ignored. She was trapped. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need theatrics. I simply let the facts, the law, the contract, and the evidence do the work. As I hung up, I sat back, letting the moment settle around me. The migraine had long since faded. The panic, the manipulation, the threats, they were irrelevant now. I had orchestrated nothing but clarity, precision, and leverage, and the trap had sprung exactly as it should. I could almost see Vanessa's mind racing, calculating, realizing that she had underestimated me at every turn. And in that anticipation, in that precise moment of reckoning, I felt something I hadn't in years control. I wasn't just responding, I was directing, commanding, and finally, fully, decisively, in charge of the situation that had haunted me for so long. Saturday night arrived, and from my apartment, I watched the world I had known unravel. I wasn't at my father's house, not at Vanessa's party, not anywhere near the chaos that was about to unfold. Instead, I sat in my pajamas with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the secure video feed I had arranged. The backyard was a flurry of activity white tents, a DJ spinning on the patio, teenagers everywhere, their phones raised to capture every extravagant detail. Lucy was in the center, beaming in her designer dress, oblivious to the storm about to hit. Vanessa, holding a wine glass, was playing the host with all the bravado in the world, laughing, directing, making sure every parent saw her in control. My father was there too, standing like a proud patriarch, commanding attention, seemingly immune to the reality that would soon confront him. They were celebrating their victory over me, or at least, they thought they were. And then, the moment arrived. 2 police cruisers, lights off, rolled quietly to a stop in front of the house. From my vantage point, I could see 2 uniformed officers and 2 plainclothes detectives stepping up the driveway, moving with calm precision. The music continued, oblivious to the approaching storm. I leaned forward, gripping my tea mug tightly. Vanessa didn't see them at first, but then one of the detectives, a woman in a sharp blazer, approached my father. He puffed up instantly, gesturing, pointing, trying to assert control. his face a mix of outrage and disbelief. He thought his presence, his authority, could intimidate anyone. But the detective did not flinch. She simply showed him the warrant. The music stopped. Every teenager froze. Phones still raised, capturing the unfolding scene. Vanessa saw it too. Her smile, so carefully constructed just moments ago, vanished. The wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the stone patio. Her eyes widened in pure animal panic. She made a half step back toward the house, but the detective's voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. Miss Vanessa, please stay where you are. The teenagers were frozen, some whispering, some wide-eyed. Parents were scrambling, looking for answers. But the officers moved methodically, like a tide that could not be stopped. Vanessa's face was pale, her breathing rapid, her bravado gone. And then came the words that would unravel everything she thought she controlled. You are under arrest for bank fraud, identity theft, and forgery. No, you can't. Harriet did this, she shrieked, a sound of pure panic and desperation. Every ounce of control, every ounce of confidence evaporated in an instant. She turned to my father, screaming for his intervention, but he, who had so often wielded his authority as a weapon against me, froze, his face drained of color. He looked from the detectives to his daughter, to the crowd of parents, and then back at them, his body language betraying a man completely undone. The threats, the bluster, the manipulation, all useless now. He was powerless. Vanessa was guided, gently but firmly, by the officers, her arms being secured behind her back. Dad, tell them it was Harriet, call her. She can fix this, she screamed, every word laced with panic and accusation. But he stood there, silent, unable or unwilling to intervene. The public, the neighbors, the parents, they were all watching, recording, witnessing the downfall of the family he had tried so desperately to control. I sat back in my chair, sipping my now cold tea, calm, detached. I wasn't celebrating. This wasn't satisfaction in a petty sense. It was observation, understanding, the quiet acknowledgement that justice, slow and deliberate, had finally caught up. Vanessa had built her own trap and fallen straight into it. My father had wielded authority and intimidation for years, only to find that real consequences cannot be shouted away. The aftermath was immediate. Vanessa, confronted with irrefutable evidence, had no choice but to comply with the arrest. The party, once the crown jewel of her scheme, was now a tableau of her failures. The teenagers were ushered away, parents consoling their kids, and the music was gone, leaving only the echoes of shattered glass and broken expectations. The scene was almost cinematic, a public unraveling of a private deception. Later, I learned the final legal outcomes. Vanessa, faced with overwhelming evidence, pleaded guilty to wire fraud and identity theft. The $50,000 loan, much of it siphoned or hidden, was seized. The judge, considering her first-time offender status and her responsibilities as a single mother, was lenient but firm, suspended sentence, probation, community service, and full restitution to both me and the bank, publicly. My father's humiliation was complete. His name, once associated with authority and control, was now tied to the scandal in the local paper. Friends and acquaintances shunned him. His house, once a symbol of defiance and social standing, was sold, and he moved into a small, Sterile apartment in a retirement community. He never contacted me again. Lucy, the most delicate piece of this wreckage, took her time to reach out. About a week later, she called, hesitant, tentative, her voice small. "Aunt Harriet?" I answered softly, quietly, grounding her in calmness. We talked about the complexity of the situation, about truth and deception, and about the art program I had promised. I reassured her that the offer still stood, that my focus had always been her future, not fleeting extravagance. Over time, we began to rebuild a relationship founded on trust and mutual respect, something real, fragile, but meaningful. As for me, the legal and emotional severing was complete. I sold the house Vanessa had tied me to, cutting the final financial link to that toxic past. My apartment no longer felt empty, it felt peaceful, my sanctuary. Life resumed its quiet rhythm, but with new boundaries. I still worked hard, but I also took vacations, reconnected with friends, and learned to protect my time and my resources. Justice, I realized, isn't always explosive or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, it's methodical. It's the click of a lock, the turning of a key, the closing of a door that refuses to open to those who would do harm. And in that quiet, I finally felt free, in control, and at peace. The days after the arrest were surreal. There was a quiet that I hadn't experienced in years, a calm that settled over my apartment like a soft blanket. The city outside continued on, oblivious. The hum of traffic and distant sirens reminding me that life moved forward whether my family's chaos existed or not. And for the first time in decades, I felt a sense of control, a clarity that was both new and deeply familiar. It wasn't flashy. There were no dramatic victories or parades to mark the occasion. It was quiet, methodical, internal, and it was exactly what I needed. I started by reclaiming the life I had almost lost in service to others. Selling the house that had been tied to Vanessa's reckless decisions was the first tangible step. I had poured so much of myself into that space, my money, my energy, my patience, and it had been used against me, leveraged like a weapon. Watching the sale go through, finalizing the severing of that connection, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The apartment I had already made my sanctuary now truly felt like mine. The walls, once just a quiet backdrop, became a space of peace and reflection. The air felt lighter. My routines, long disrupted by family crises, were finally mine to govern. I slept better, woke up without a knot of dread tightening in my chest. And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to enjoy the quiet solitude that I had long craved. Rebuilding a relationship with Lucy became the next priority. She was cautious at first, understandably so. She had witnessed the collapse of her world, the chaos of adults behaving irresponsibly, and the loss of control she had relied on from her parents. Her voice on the phone was tentative when she called, hesitant, almost trembling. "Aunt Harriet?" she said, soft and uncertain. I answered gently, trying to mirror the calm stability she needed. We spoke slowly at first, about little things, how she was adjusting to living with her dad, schoolwork, the normal anxieties of a teenager. I let her lead, allowed her to dictate the pace, the topics, the emotional boundaries. I didn't push, I didn't lecture, I just listened and responded with honesty and patience. The small conversations, seemingly mundane, began to build trust. Each call, each text, each moment of connection was like laying brick in a foundation that had been shaken but was now being rebuilt stronger. And then there was the art program. Lucy had dreamed of attending the summer pre-college program for years, talking about it with that wide-eyed, bright-eyed ambition that only teenagers can possess. I had promised it to her, and the truth was, it wasn't just about fulfilling a promise. It was about giving her something meaningful, something that would last longer than a single day of a party or a fleeting moment of extravagance. I handled all the logistics quietly, without drama, without any fanfare, tuition, housing, supplies. It was all covered. And I made sure she understood that this was for her future, not a token to demonstrate my control or my moral superiority. When she finally realized it was real, she was stunned, almost speechless. And that stunned moment was beautiful, not because I had executed some clever plan, but because it was pure, uncomplicated, and good. Over time, I watched her blossom. The art program wasn't just a place to learn technique. It was a space where she could explore her creativity, her voice, her independence. Each update she sent, each project she shared, became a bridge between us, connecting us in a way that had never existed before. We began to talk about her ambitions, her fears, her ideas for the future. And I listened, really listened, letting her know that her dreams mattered, that her agency mattered, that she could make choices for herself without fear of the chaos of entitlement and manipulation that had dominated her early life. As I guided and supported her, I also reflected on my own boundaries. Setting limits had never been easy for me. Years of being the family safety net, the mediator, the bank, the rescuer, had taught me that saying no was dangerous, socially unacceptable, emotionally perilous. But the events of the past weeks had crystallized a truth I had long avoided. Boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself. They're about survival, sanity, and respect. I started applying the same careful attention to my personal life that I had always applied to contracts. I didn't just say no. I defined terms, conditions, and consequences. I did not leave room for misinterpretation or manipulation. My time, my money, my energy, they were mine to allocate. And anyone hoping to exploit them had to play by my rules. And when they didn't, the rules came down hard, like a carefully drafted clause in a contract. The legal lessons I had spent decades mastering had now become life lessons, guiding me toward a life that was sustainable and secure. There were moments of quiet reflection when the weight of what had transpired truly sank in. The betrayal, the manipulation, the audacity of my father and sister, it was staggering to process. But the more I processed, the more I realized that my strength had always been there, dormant under the layers of obligation and exhaustion. I had acted with precision, clarity, and calm when it mattered most. And in doing so, I reclaimed not just my finances or my legal standing, but my dignity and self-respect. Justice, I realized, wasn't always a loud, explosive courtroom victory that people imagine. Sometimes justice was quiet. It was meticulous, deliberate, patient. It was watching a fraud unravel according to the rules you understood better than anyone else. It was seeing consequences take shape naturally, without ego or theatrics. I took long walks, finally letting myself breathe without anxiety gnawing at my chest. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, the ones who reminded me that relationships could be reciprocal, nurturing, and healthy. I took vacations, some short, some longer, and allowed myself to exist outside of the constant pressure to rescue, to mediate, to absorb the chaos of others. I learned that peace was not a luxury, it was a necessity, and it required vigilance, attention, and sometimes the courage to sever toxic connections permanently. And slowly, life regained texture and depth. My apartment no longer felt empty, it felt intentional, curated by me, a reflection of who I was and the life I had chosen to lead. The work I still did was fulfilling, yes, but I now measured it against the standards of my well-being. I celebrated small victories, quiet moments of joy, and the growing, tentative but real bond with Lucy. Together, we began to build something new: trust, connection, and respect, independent of the chaos of the past. Looking back, I understood something profound. Independence isn't just financial. It's emotional, it's legal, it's personal. It's the ability to act with clarity, to enforce boundaries, to support the right things, and to walk away from the rest. And in that understanding, I finally felt free. The contracts I had spent a lifetime drafting, the leverage I had discovered and wielded, the calm precision of my actions, they weren't just professional skills anymore. They were tools of liberation, allowing me to close doors on those who had harmed me and open doors to a life built on my terms. I sipped my tea one evening, looking out at the city lights, reflecting on the quiet victories, the lessons learned, and the peaceful control I had reclaimed. Justice had arrived, not as a spectacle, but as methodical, precise consequence. And in that quiet, deliberate triumph, I finally understood what peace felt like: earned, unshakable, and wholly my own. I had closed the door on the past and, for the first time, fully turned the key to open the door to my future. In the end, Harriet reclaimed her life calm, in control, with clear boundaries she'd never had before. Peace settled over her apartment, her decisions, and her future. She rebuilt what mattered with Lucy, invested in real opportunities, and let go of the chaos that once ruled her world. It's a reminder that sometimes justice isn't loud, it's deliberate, quiet, and empowering. If this story left you thinking about resilience and reclaiming control, stick around and maybe hit like or subscribe to see more stories like this.